My guest today is returning to the OGM podcast. Her previous appearances dealt with her work as a private citizen about a road on a planning map through the Dune Pioneer Park area, and she appeared another time to talk about her work on preserving the Governor's House and County Jail. She was a City of Kitchener councillor for 3 years, representing the Dune Pioneer Park ward from 1997 to 2000, before she moved to Regional Council, representing Kitchener as a regional councillor from 2000 to 2014, when she decided to retire her unique diamond-shaped election signs. She was recently recognized by the Lieutenant Governor for heritage work and received the Lieutenant Governor's Ontario Heritage Award for Lifetime Achievement, although she still has lots to do yet. I feel like I'm welcoming royalty today. I'm pleased to welcome back my friend and former seatmate when we both served on the Grand River Conservation Authority, Jean Haalboom. Jean, welcome to the show.
Good morning, Rob.
So your third appearance. That's you're an exclusive club with people like Ken Sealing and Brian Storts.
Oh my.
So, Jean, we had some great shows talking about what you did before, and we've said we were going to get back together because, the show is really about municipal politics. And while those two earlier shows talked about your interactions with politicians as you were doing what you were doing from the grassroots perspective, at some point you decided you wanted to be on the other side of the table.
Well, that's true, but I don't think I left the grassroots, because that's why I ran,
right.
And that was my platform.
Yeah. So tell me about that. So you're doing your stuff in the community, and you decide to run in the 1997 municipal election. What drove you to that decision?
It just so happened that there was a reworking of the wards, like the boundaries, and so there was a new ward created for our area, namely the Dune Pioneer Park ward. And knowing it well and having retired from education, I thought, well, let's give it a go, because there are many issues that will be facing our ward, the new ward, like development, land development, and the preservation of the area and the community. So I gave it a go.
So why don't you just tell us for a second what the ward that you're in, what are the unique heritage environmental aspects of that area? I'm not sure if a lot of people really recognize what you have there. It's a bit of a jewel.
So Dune goes back to the early 1800s. It was one of the and I will say Pioneer Tower area, Dune, Pioneer Tower area. Pioneer Park came about in 1969. But the old area, it was in the former Waterloo Township. And then when county government ceased to exist, we now have regional government. And Dune was absorbed into the city of Kitchener. But
right.
Okay, so I'm going to just say what I said to the people in 1997 when I ran, that
okay.
It's rich with historic sites, woodlands, and vistas. It is a friendly, community-minded resident group. We have intensive growth, which we need to be mindful of how that evolves. But really, the jewel of it too, Rob, it goes back to, for 10,000 years, to the date of the Wisconsin and Glacier, because right. Pinnacle Hill, and I'm sure when you're coming down the 401 on the Highway 401 and you want to go, you'll see the big hill. And that was we often forget to highlight the geological history. And that was one of the three, I'll say maybe the three sisters, cousins, because right. Chickadee was formed on that. And so the Baden Hill. And then we have the valleys, and then we have like wetlands and environmentally sensitive areas as a result. But we
go ahead. Sorry.
We go back to, the twine industry in the 1850s that was here, the first successful flax mill in Upper Canada, the Tilt Farm. Those of you who are buying eggs these days want to find, they're still farming up the road. Right. So it's that kind of stuff we need to preserve.
Yeah, I mean, you just unloaded a whole lot of things there, because I just wanted to point out, a lot of people will think of you with physical heritage, but you also have a deep appreciation for the environmental, culturally significant heritage features of our community as well. But and you mentioned the twine. Doesn't your house have some connection to that as well?
I always say this was M.B. Perine's last hurrah, in which I live. The Perrine brothers came up from New York State with the intention of growing flax and then having a flax mill set up, and then twine out of that, and so our house was the last one built by Perrine, the founder of Dune Twines.
So Jean, just before you decided to run in '97, though, you were involved in various organizations in the community too, right? Very heritage conservation type organizations. Like, can you just tell us a few?
Yeah. In particular, we have in our Heritage Conservation District, which I worked on that through the Heritage Committee at the city. We have in our area the birthplace of Homer Watson, the landscape artist, Canada's first, and then we have the gallery where he painted. Homer Watson took over the Adam Ferry, who founded Dune, started with, which is now in Lower Dune, and we had a big mill complex there. So Homer Watson House and Gallery, I worked on that to get it preserved.
Right.
And what else? Oh, I'm just trying to think. Scenic roads. I worked with the group over in Carindale to identify and have those, it's 12 kilometers of trail, like smaller roads, country roads.
I remember this scenic road concept. When I was mayor in North Dumfries, they would talk about scenic roads in different areas that had some particular heritage significance, like a stretch of county road or country road. And so that is interesting. At the time that you decided to run, Mike Harris was the premier of the province at the time. And so I guess there was various turmoils with that got you interested in running.
I don't think I was basing my running on what was happening at that time. However, once I was elected, and I will say the next 3 years, to me, there was a lot of turmoil because, and it was very unsettling, in my opinion, because, and the staff, I felt, had low morale because they didn't know whether they were coming or going.
Yeah. And we'll get to that in a sec. I just want to go back to you deciding to run. So what was the tipping point for you in deciding to run for to be a city councillor?
It was just looking at our environment, looking at the potential development that was to come about, and observing how development was happening. And I really felt strongly that we needed to be mindful of our small communities, and Dune in particular, and also that we blend our old and new communities much better. And so that was my issue.
Yeah, so I just want to ask you just briefly on the actual election campaign. So this is a new ward. There's no incumbent, right? No prior counselor was stepping in to run in this particular ward. Is that correct?
Uh, no resident counselor.
So, but you never know when there's adjustments. Sometimes people's boundaries change. But you came up with your. I remember your diamond sign, which is basically, isn't it just a square sign tilted? That's your diamond sign idea. Is that something you used right from the very beginning of your campaigns?
Right from the very beginning. Right from the very beginning. And
Uh,
also, too, I like to think of the message on the sign. It was
mhm.
clear, uncluttered, and the significant points on the sign.
Yes. So, and what was the reasoning for tilting it? Was it just to stand out in the crowd, that sort of thing?
Um, I take issue when you say tilting it.
Okay, I apologize. Creating the diamond sign.
It was a diamond.
It was a diamond. Yes.
And anyway, it's important, I feel, that you have to be able to distinguish your name from all the hundreds of other signs that are going to be put up at the same time.
Right. 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 Well, Jean, I always tell everyone you're a diamond in the rough.
I'm taking
That's
issue with that again.
so. Tell me about the campaign. Was it like campaigns with door knocking, the pamphlets? How did you communicate and get out to the community that you were running and meeting people?
Yeah, a lot of it was door knocking. It was distributing my pamphlets. I, um, I had lots of helpers from my volunteer activities and my people from education and friends groups that I had and family. And so um, it was because at that time you didn't have a big, like Twitter and Facebook and
Social media, right, right. Pre-social media,
yeah,
yes,
nothing like that. And but I had a lot of personal contacts
yes.
in the mall. And it was a smaller ward. Pioneer Tower at that time was also included in the ward.
Okay. You didn't have social media, but you had Team Haalboom.
I did have that, yes.
Okay, that's great. So now, and you were running against how many people?
One other person.
Okay, so okay, so election night, you win. Now you're on council. Tell me about your experience on city council.
um, well, it's very interesting. And you will find that all the things you had in mind that you're going to do um, might not match the agenda that has already been established before you. But
Yeah, yeah.
so, of course, there are committees that you will sit on, and um, also too the experience. No one can imagine the bundle of papers that come to you on a Friday night in preparation for the Monday meetings, which had to do with public
Yeah.
works.
Back
And so,
then, Gene, yeah. Now it comes in what's called e-scribe, so it's all on a notebook, so you don't get so it gets sent to you. It's not paper anymore.
yeah,
But I just want to jump back though because
yeah,
there's something very important you talked about, which is you're campaigning on ideas and
yeah,
a platform, so to speak, of things you'd like to do. And you mentioned you get there and people forget you're arriving on a council that has, for the most part, people that have been there at least for one term before you or two terms before you, and they already have an agenda that's been established from all that work, right?
that's right. And staff already have their plans in place based on the desires of those former counselors and wishes what they have brought from the people. And well, also too, you have to consider that each one of these counselors comes with a bucket of wishes based
Yeah.
on the award. And how does that get worked to the top, which is quite a job.
When we were talking earlier, you said to me, when I asked you about your experience on Kitchener Council, you said you need to know that you're a newbie.
True, true.
And I think this is what we're talking about is you can come with all sorts of brim and vinegar or whatever the saying is, but I think you need to park it a little bit, don't you?
That's true. And you probably have to get to know the other counselors. And, you know, to be frank, I will say environmental ideas like, say, with wetlands, environmentally sensitive areas, um, roads, sensitivity, and how we put roads through neighborhoods and that. I did not feel they were top of the agenda with many of my colleagues.
Well, yeah, I mean, many of your colleagues would have been. Were there any other women on council when you got elected?
Yes, there was Councillor Wiley, who had been there quite a while from the Westmount area,
Right.
and then there was another female who had been newly elected from the downtown area. Mm-hmm.
So, was there anything in particular that you tried to advance early on in your time on council in Kitchener?
I I just don't recall. It just seems to me that a lot of time was absorbed in how we might function if we were as a city were to disappear and we were to become one community, like one
Yeah,
big.
yeah. I'll talk to you about that in a sec. Yeah, that's an important topic for sure, and we're going to talk about that. But I was just curious more about the dynamic in terms of the people that the other counselors that you're interacting with, and what was the reception like to some of your ideas?
Well, there was one win, and that had to do with the uncovering of a structure out in Pioneer Tower, wood log structure, and trying to get that saved because of heritage. And thanks to a few of my acquaintances who were quite the supporters of one or two other counselors who kind of put the heat on, and I was able to get that structure saved then and purchased by the city to be rebuilt. But
Which structure? What structure was that?
it was I believe over in Pioneer Tower. It's the barn, like there's the remnants of a barn that is over on the edge, and it's part of a ruin over there now and reconstructed.
Okay.
Yeah, not the whole barn. Yeah.
But you point out you had to use some arm twisting and some sort of quote lobbying to
Yeah.
get it done, because probably you didn't have the votes to start.
Well, yeah. I mean, who would want to spend tax dollars on an old barn, and
Or an old bunker.
Yeah. I think too. I had a different opinion about signs.
Oh yeah, signs. Tell me about that. Signs. You said something about the signs that bugged you about signs along the road, but we're not talking about election signs.
No, and I just want to say, Rob, in my opinion, it has been a lost opportunity for any newcomers to the election fold. And as my colleague Sean Strickland had pointed out before I retired, that how many weeks really in 4 years' time does putting up signs occur?
I know. Okay, but we're segueing. I want to talk about what you did back in the day.
I'm saying that the election sign, I'm going to say this, that I really feel it was one way to say election time is here
Yeah,
and get out and vote. But all
I
right,
know.
the thing about signs, I just had so much difficulty when there would be a plaza owner or a commercial owner,
Right.
and they would go to the committee of adjustment and ask for a minor variance to their sign, meaning height. And so the height is 10 feet, but no, they would say 15, 18 feet high. And to me, I looked at places like Niagara on the Lake. I look at places like Stratford, and where you have sign design, and you don't have these signs all over along the road. So they have, think about your plaza, the commercial, they have a sign
Right.
out on the road and it states all the businesses that are in there. And
Yep.
then you go in the plaza and there are big signs in each building, and yet they need signs in the plaza where they are.
Well, okay, so you're talking about what we would call maybe what sign pollution or something like that. I mean, from your perspective, were you able to make some changes or bring about some changes with respect to that?
No, I wasn't, and it was quite offensive to many of these, I guess, commercial owners that felt, well, we're not Stratford and we're not Niagara on the Lake, and
Uh,
like and my colleagues were, the majority of them were quite sympathetic to their
to
call.
businesses.
It's needed for business.
Right. So just to explain this, so what happens is committee of adjustments would be some people from the community who sit on as a committee to hear a request for a variation on an existing bylaw, like a sign bylaw, and the committee of adjustments may approve or disapprove. And their decision then came to you as a counselor to council for final approval.
Yes, at the time, that's the way.
Yeah, at the time. And
Yeah,
so as you were sitting at that council table and
yeah.
these matters would come before you, and maybe committee of adjustments approve that 15-foot sign where it only said 10-foot, you would try to get it changed, but you weren't successful in getting a majority of your fellow councilors to support your position.
That's true. And also, you realize with each proposal, a staff report comes forward, and
Right.
it's based on the sign bylaw. And so the sign bylaw, in my opinion, is being constantly broken.
Right. So it's almost why have a bylaw.
Yeah, let's do free for all.
Okay. So let me ask you though, so while you weren't as successful on the sign bylaw or sign changes,
Yeah,
how you must have been doing a lot of heritage work at the time when you're at city council.
that's true because I was chair of the Heritage Kitchener. Yeah.
Yeah. So tell us about some of the things you were able to get accomplished in that position.
Well, let me see. uh, um, all right. One of the buildings, it's the pumping station at, I'm trying to think, if you take Homer Watson to the end and you come to Sterling and you swing around, there's a regional pumping
Yeah.
station.
Is it Greenbrook or whatever?
Yeah. And so that one was designated. Let me see, I'm trying to think.
How about any conservation heritage districts while you were chair?
Thank you for reminding me. Yes. One of the ones that I felt very strongly about was St. Mary's Heritage Conservation District. That's the wartime district. And
Yes, all those little homes by the hospital.
yeah, but the beauty of that district is that they were built around parkettes and
Right.
and narrow little streets, and there are two major styles that you will house styles that are in that area. In fact, Canada, the Canada Post had one of their posters and a stamp commemorating, I guess, veterans and the wartime housing,
Ah,
and this sample would be on that. A heritage planner from London came over, and sat down with our heritage planner. And we went around. And he said, "I can't believe everything is so intact here. Mind you, it's so intact. It's just so." And so I did work on that one, and we managed to get it in place. Yeah.
I was going to say, I hope you have one, because even when I was mayor, I got one done. I couldn't have more than Jean Haalboom.
And also out in like in Bridgeport, there were Bridgeport. There was I think it was one or two houses properties that we designated there. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So at some point, though, you mentioned the turmoil that was being caused by the province for your 3 years while you're on Kitchener Council. And I'm guessing this is all about whether there's going to be amalgamation or not. Is that?
That's true. That's true. And the dynamics are quite interesting. I don't know.
There was a lot going on. I mean, you had wasn't John Sweeney doing a review or a report as well, and that was just sort of around the same time, and a lot of discussion about whether there would be amalgamation or not.
I'm sorry, that one I don't recall.
Just tell me what you recall then. Sorry.
I recall the many meetings that all the councils of all the communities came together. In particular, I can't recall how much participation there was in the part of the townships, but I do recall, actually, yes, there was. The councillors were there. And I do recall were intense discussions with Kitchener, Cambridge, and Waterloo. And interestingly enough, I had no idea, but the standards for engineering standards are very different for, say, renewal for pipes, which bring the water and take the sewage and all that kind of thing from one urban municipality to another.
Right.
And who's going to, whose standards would be adopted?
Right, right.
Who's going to take care of the debt that would be created? And one of the things you will recall, the Rim Park.
Yes, fiasco.
And there was so much concern about who was going to absorb that debt or that money. And interestingly, it was pointed out that the taxpayer would not be on the line for anything.
So there was a lot of, these discussions were happening because there was a belief that the provincial government was going to be enforcing amalgamation, or why were these discussions happening? Do you recall that?
Yes, my recollection was, and others who are on the council, if they hear me, they say, "Well, no, that's not the way."
This is your podcast. You tell us your recollection.
Okay, my recollection was that amalgamation was imminent because the Tories or PCs, they had been amalgamating these other municipalities. And so we were likely to be amalgamated as well.
So you want to be proactive and get ahead of the conversation.
Yeah, it would seem that's what happened.
And how did it, so you're having these conversations, you're realizing there's a lot of different parts to this. There's different municipalities with different debt levels. There's different municipalities with different levels of, as you say, engineering, waterworks, sewer works, what have you, infrastructure standards. So how did it all go? Where did it go?
Well, surprise, it seemed that the PCs were losing candidates when they had by-elections. And so then there was a lull in this whole amalgamation. But because the big claim was, and I'm sure if you read the papers of the day, too many politicians, just like you hear today, too many politicians. We have to reduce the number of politicians. Oh, make it more efficient. But my answer to that is it's representation by politicians, but you get bigger staff and so on. But what happened was, so this is the way I interpret it. The province had to look like they were downsizing number of politicians. So in our example, they determined then that the councillors would run and be directly elected, which would be the first for Kitchener, directly elected to either the region or the city. And you as a councillor had to choose, if you're running for council, which would you choose?
Okay, I don't want to jump there yet because that was part of your decision making for switching. But you're saying that out of all these conversations, one of the things was this whole concept of what we call a direct elect, which is you're directly elected to either a city council or a regional council, versus a double elect where you get elected to your city council and then the city councilors decide who's going to be their representative at the region.
True.
Now, on that, were you the representative during your time on Kitchener City Council at the region?
No.
And did you see that any opportunity for you being that under this double elect process?
Unlikely.
Okay. Knowing all that, that was one of your decisions in terms of deciding. Why did you want to run for the region?
Primarily because of all the involvement with, shall we say, in land development and policies with respect to land development, preservation of landscapes, and how we as a region are going to look in the future.
So your experience, the things you were most interested in, you realized, if I could say that, it's tougher to get those done just as a city of Kitchener councillor, and there's more opportunity as a regional Waterloo councillor.
Sure, because the region is the policy place, and has big thinking, whereas a city, it's more local, enforce those things or put out the regulations and so on. And then,
so Jean, I just want to just tidy up something on the amalgamation issue. So once the provincial government was losing seats, et cetera, I guess there was less of a motivation on their part to move ahead with any amalgamation, and that kind of, what did you say, killed the conversation locally?
Yes, I would say so. I would say so. And it lulled the conversation.
Right. Okay. Lulled it is what you said.
Yes. And it's put it into rest for all these years. And now, and now there's rumbling again. And
yes. There's a movement in the universe, as I think Yoda would say something about that. But okay. Now, you've decided you're going to leave Kitchener City Council. You're going to run for the region. What was that like in terms of campaigning?
Wow. Well, it's quite an eye opener. I still have my team of people, and with my work at the city, and as I think I mentioned earlier, that on the Friday night you would get the big package of material to read Monday. But over the weekends, there were many groups that you would have to go visit and events you would have to attend. And through that, I gained a big knowledge. And it was up to the councillors if they wanted to attend which events. And of course, I love to go out and meet the people. So I went to all the events, and you got to know people from all across the city and supporters. So again,
So you had some profile. So because now you're running citywide as a regional councillor, right? It's not just in your ward; it's all the wards, basically, like a mayor running for the city of Kitchener.
Right. And contrary to what's thought that, heritage, there are a lot of people that really appreciate heritage,
Of
really
course.
appreciate the city, and they, really were upset about that city hall being demolished,
Right.
and preservation we needed, and like green space, saving that. And so I don't think I changed my platform at all. I
Right.
continued on with green, in other words, the environment and the heritage, and also too their safe water. What are we going to do with sewage, and also accountability? uh, don't blow your money, and be mindful of how you spend your taxes. So I mean, that wasn't my big issue, but it was there.
Right. Right. And so in 2000, you get elected along with I think it was Tom Galloway, Jeff Lorenz, and Jim Weidman from Kitchener.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So tell me about some of the things that you were focused on when you got there. So because now you've got a little bit of experience because you spent 3 years in Kitchener, but you're new to the regional table. So are you still a newbie or are you less a newbie?
I think because of all my heritage work, and having been the chair of the Waterloo Regional Heritage Foundation, there were initiatives where different parts of the region, like departments, would come from, if it were for funding, because the Heritage Foundation has funding. Well, it used to, for different things. So one of the things was a scenic roads study done,
Right.
and so I knew a lot about the region and roads, and how these scenic cultural values came about, and also with heritage, the Heritage Planning Advisory Committee. I was chair of that, and knew it, and so I did have interaction with the planning commissioners quite a bit
Beforehand.
beforehand.
Okay.
And also to, I found it very easy to engage with the staff, and the staff would say, whatever what if you have something you'd like discussed or look for policy, please come forward. And there was a welcoming.
So did you feel that? So that's interesting. Did you feel, because now you're at the I'll just say lower tier, and now you're at the upper tier. You're at the urban municipality, and now you're at the upper tier municipality. Did you have this welcoming feeling or sense or remark when you were at the city of Kitchener?
Uh, Maybe it had something to do with the design of the building, like councils in the lower building, and the staff is in the other building, and then you have the link and the rotunda downstairs, and so it seemed, staff had their area and council had their area.
Oh, so you didn't have that. So this interaction helped you integrate better or get to know staff better and collaborate better.
Yeah, and you're talking now about the region, are you, Rob? But
Well, I was just comparing. I was trying to get a sense of your comparison. Is that a comparison between the city of Kitchener and the region in terms of your interaction with staff?
and also too, maybe how it had always. I have no idea. All I know is that at the region, it was an enabling experience, and staff, I don't think they ever felt put upon, or like there was mutual respect, and it was, um, it, that was my experience,
Yeah. Yeah.
and also, well, I made it my business to go around and to each floor in the region of
Yes.
that,
Yes.
and introduce myself and say, here's who I am, and who are you, and that kind of thing.
Yeah, no, that's good because I mean, it's very much a team approach, right? I mean, you have
Yeah,
to, I mean, you campaign individually, but once you're elected, you're part of a team, which is not only the councilors, but it's the staff. And so you've got to now develop that culture amongst each other.
sure. And also too, if there was a situation where I thought, okay, this is problematic, and you had an idea of to whom you would speak, and dialogue.
So, Jean, I can ask you this question. You can answer it how you like, but did you ever feel like you were the outsider to an old boys club or anything like that when you were coming in
To the region?
to the city or the region, anywhere?
Not to the region,
Mm-hmm.
not at all. Uh, at the city, I will say it was more so that way.
Right, right.
But to be fair, these counselors may not have perceived that that's how they were interacting.
No, fair enough. Yeah, that's fine. I mean, I'm just asking. That was your perception of how
Yeah,
things were.
yeah,
You know, look, there's lots of things that people have to overcome over time. I mean,
yeah.
that's the whole systemic nature of things that we have to try to recognize and see how we can make things better for others, so that they don't feel like how you felt in those
Mm-hmm.
situations, right? That's so. So we're not casting shame or blame or anything on anyone. It's just I was just curious what the feeling was like for you when you were coming on board.
In 2000, this would be the first time that regional staff would experience directly elected councillors,
Yeah.
whether it was Cambridge, Waterloo's, Kitchener, and so on. And so I just recall that the chief person in the clerk's department coming and just encouraging and welcoming us all. And so maybe because it was new grounds, just think, even the regional chair, it was the first time the regional chair was directly elected.
Was directly elected as well. Yeah, I mean that's a very good point. And just on that direct elect versus the double elect, I think the perception too was that even though you're elected as the regional councillor from Kitchener to regional council, the hope, I think, was that the people around the horseshoe would not be parochial in their views, but have a more expansive view of the region from a Kitchener or Waterloo or Cambridge or township lens, for example.
I believe that's the way it pans out. And I would say, in my case, when the educational job I had, it took me to all the areas of the region, or Waterloo County, so to
Right,
speak.
right.
So I really knew, like, I knew the townships with a farming background. I knew the rural aspects. I knew people out there, along with the cities. And so my background in my education work really took me to all those areas and exposed me to that, along with having been a heritage foundation chair and heritage planning. So I had a really good concept of what all the areas were about. And I could empathize with the other municipalities, and
Right.
as I said, the councillors wanted.
Yes.
I found that really refreshing.
So let me, we talked about one of your earlier podcasts that it was about a road on a planning map. So I think you kind of mentioned that you kind of realized that a lot of planning decisions. I don't want to use the word key planning decisions, but I'll let you describe that how you see fit. Do they happen at the region? The region is a major influence with respect to planning, or what was your perception about that?
Planning at the region, it's policy making. In other words, the building form we want, the formation, how we want traffic flow, how we want health and social services. Like it's an overview, it's a policy, it's big thinking. What do we want? What's our philosophy? And then the local tier, they do their specifics as to where these roads will go. So as far as the the road on the map, the one that was the line on the map through my neighborhood, that was a city decision, not a national decision. Like Homer Watson Boulevard, when it came about, it was a regional decision.
Right.
And it did play a bit of havoc where it divided Dune into two communities.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Just like the 401, I fear and think has divided the Cambridge or
Hespeler. Well, Hespeler, for example,
and it's done its division. So the big major roads, yeah.
But let's talk about, I want to go to a specific example about planning and your involvement. And this is the LRT, the ION, and the work you were doing with the Citizens Committee during the pre-development or while the development was going on. But anyway, looking at planning, and why don't you describe the work you were doing in that Citizens Committee?
All right. I'm going to backtrack. Because in 2003, the province, and I believe now we have a different government. Is it the Liberal government?
In 2003, I think it was.
Okay. So there had been a lot of concern about sprawl, urban sprawl, and we need more in dense communities and so on. So the province came out with the places to grow. And we hence then in 2003 developed the regional growth management strategy. And this was all about how we are going to protect our farmland and how we're going to be more dense, more compact. We're going to check the urban sprawl. And so we're also looking to develop a new official plan, which came up in 2010. And staff proposed then that we have a community advisory group to guide this official plan. And that would have representation from social services, health, education, development, engineering, focus, culture, heritage, all those.
So it had like government and the public and private business. Is that?
Yeah, the economic development in so on. And then a couple of agriculture. That was another one that was represented on a community. And so when the staff would go up, before the staff would go out with their papers to discuss what would be planned for the regional, they would bring this information to the committee to vet and see, how do you think this will go over with the public and sort of vet it. And
so what sort of things were they vetting?
Policy for the agricultural areas, urban.
Well, let's talk about, I want to focus on the urban where all the stops are and that sort of thing. What was the policy development like around that?
You mean with the LRT? Are you talking about?
Yeah.
Well, we hadn't got to that at all. Not then.
Let's jump to that.
Okay. So in other words, it was that. And then, all right. So the other part of that was the planning and land planning. But then we have, as you're mentioning, LRT. And I can say that most of my council colleagues were not too interested or supportive of this LRT, and also too, nor were the the municipal staffs that would be involved, like planning and engineering, they were not very centered, and I figured to push back and so on. So I'm going to jump in between here.
Okay.
Because to convince council that this might be a way to control the urban growth, so we're not going out into the farmland and that.
Right.
Let's go visit places where they have LRT, or the ion, so to speak.
Yeah, LRT, rail
Yeah,
transit.
light rail transit. So, okay, so one of the places they sent us was Portland, Oregon, which was, and we got the story, and it was true about how investment was coming back, re-stimulating the downtown. Old buildings were rejuvenated. And there, I have to say, Rob, I never saw one intensification building more than 10 stories high. I saw on a 3-story, 4-story. I saw buildings around parks, public art, and I did see businesses, like small entrepreneurs, and like rejuvenated. Like it was such, I thought, healthy. Yes. I mean, I didn't have a problem with this concept. I did not. The LRT, whatever. Right. I saw it. The other example was Calgary. And Calgary has a lot of towers.
Yes, downtown. They're downtown.
Yeah, nothing's rejuvenated as far as shops and all that. And it's like, like a rail and towers. And so we went, and my perspective was, and I told staff, I have no interest in ending up with the look of Calgary. If you can do Portland, I support it. I want that set. Okay.
So now jump to your citizens committee. You're getting updates, you're getting presentations. Your group is kind of, are you deciding things, or you're just providing some guidelines?
Just advising and commenting and everything. And I will say that the committee members, they were very supportive of this LRT, especially we're saving farmland. We're not going to urban sprawl, and the intensification, rejuvenation. Our committee walked around. We looked at stores and towns and said, okay, this is how this could work, and here's how it's going to be rejuvenated. And also, too, to deal with the pushback, primarily going out to the public and the staff, the region had one of its planners come up with a strategy, visualizing, first of all, looking at where intensification could happen in these downtown. So that was part one of the study. And then we have visualizing densities, part 2, future possibilities. And this is a 2007 study, and it should be around if somebody wants to look at it. But what was presented there? Shall I go on?
Yeah, just give me a quick synopsis of what was presented, because I think it's interesting to show what was presented to what we're getting.
Yeah. Okay, so a vibrant community, retaining historic structures. We had mixed uses, a pedestrian environment, mid-rise apartments.
Well, how tall is a mid-rise apartment?
No bigger than 5 stories. 6 stories, 4 stories. You should see the pictures. They're like beautiful design, ground-oriented, stacked townhouses. A mix of townhouses and apartments. And
didn't you say to me that 10 stories was the highest?
In Portland. 10 stories, yes. So 6 stories, combo, no rise.
Right.
And this was a message that went out. And honestly, it looked great. Honestly, how could it? And people came around.
So Yeah. So that was sort of the vision, but I don't think we have that now, do we?
Well, I'm looking for it. And I like, no, and also too, I remember comments coming forward that there were those people who said, you're just going to build something that only very well off people can afford.
Was there a dynamic, Jean, between the regional staff and your committee, for example, in terms of how tall you wanted buildings to be in the urban core?
No, because we were told, 4, 5, 6 story,
Okay.
a combo low-rise apartment in townhouses.
So you were
Max,
all on the same page. You were all on the same page on this then.
yes, and like a very livable, pedestrian-oriented community, reviving our like mixed, you know.
So what are your thoughts about what you're seeing now versus what you thought it was going to be?
It's challenging. To tell you the truth, I'm very disappointed that all we're ending up with shells of good buildings, and we're allowing them to go higher and higher and higher. And I have to be frank with you, Rob, because we lived in Toronto while Richard, my husband, went to school,
Yeah.
and I would see these high rises going up, and to me, the social costs that were coming out of those, like the concentration of one type of building. We're getting one type for people to live in the downtown, and one type to live out in the burbs. And how do we encourage these people to come into the down urban centers?
So there's not enough variety, not enough mix from your perspective.
Absolutely not. And we're having, I'm thinking the cost of the future. We've got concrete, steel, and glass, gray, black, and white.
Are we leaning towards Calgary or are we leaning towards Portland?
Calgary.
Okay, let's move on because we're almost out of time. But and I'll segue this way. One of the nice things about the various stations that we see along the LRT is the public art, and I know public art is a big thing for you. So why don't you talk about public art while you were a regional councillor?
Right. So there was no policy for public art when I got to the region, and with the cities, each one had public art policies, and we had contests and placement and suggested pieces. And so when the airport came about, which was maybe around 2003,
the Waterloo-Wellington Airport, just for everyone.
Our Kitchener, or the one at Breslau.
Waterloo Region Airport, whatever it's called now. Yeah.
And I said, where's the public art? And anyway, well, what's that all about? Why would you put money in public art? And luckily, the CEO for the region had just returned from his...
Jerry Thompson, you were saying, came back from Barcelona.
And as you know, Barcelona is very lively with art and architecture. Anyway, so he sounded off about sort of the look of the community, and yes, we will have public art, and that started the policy there. But one of the downsides is that there's a limited amount. I forget what they have allocated, but there is an allocation of public art. And
there's an ongoing commitment to public art. There'll be a question about how big the commitment should be. Is it too much? Is it not enough? I'm in your camp. It's not enough, as you know, from my own law office and everything I do over there. I'm a big promoter and believer in public art, and it just adds more vibrancy to your community. Jean, I just want to ask you, we're sort of going to wrap up, but I just want to ask you, reflecting on your time as a regional councillor, your time in office, what are some of the things you're most proud of?
I can't not say that having the governor's house and jail, the Waterloo County Jail, that was designated. We now have the garden that's beside it, and the commitment to keeping that up, like maintain, and the maintenance and you reuse, and that's very good. But I also was really happy with the engineering division when they took on and said, yes, the 10 historic bridges that we have, and rejuvenate them, like the Freeport Bridge, Bridgeport Bridge, the one in New Hampshire, Hartman Bridge. There are many more bridges that the region has, like historic, and they have engaged with money and so on. Okay, roundabouts. I am really pleased with the one in Bridgeport. And I have to give credit to the project engineer that was on that and working the historic bridge, the Arch Bridge, and the roundabout. And
okay. So you're saying they were the engineering to get that roundabout in without impacting the historic bridge that's there over the Grand, right?
Yeah, and also the landscaping features that went in there, and you know, I think it has few accidents at that one.
I know. But listen, Jean, I have to wrap it up here. I'm sorry. I mean, there's so much more I know we could talk about, but I know you're doing so much more great work in the community. And I know I'm going to bump into you from time to time. And given your Lieutenant Governor's Award, I'll make sure I bow appropriately when I see you.
Well, maybe I mean, if you bring that tax budget down, maybe. I can't believe it. Yeah.
Anyway, Jean, listen, thanks. I'm glad we were able to hook up, and thanks for coming on today's show.
All right. Thank you. Take care.